All right, Minding Your Business podcast community. Thank you so much for coming back for episode 171, Entrepreneurship Real Estate Trending News. There's no business like minding your own. I'm your host, Champ Ron, recording this on July the 10th, 2020. Things are going right along as they've been. We are roughly now at 4 months or so in our social distance quarantine state. So hopefully everybody is doing the best that they can. Shout out to all of our listeners, everybody that's watching on YouTube. 5 star, 5 star, and Apple helps us continue to progress the podcast and share even with a greater audience. And so I thank all of you for your support. And of course, you can catch all content at themybpodcast.com. Excited about today's guest that's joining us. Ryan Frederick, principal with AWH, joins us today. And Ryan, yeah, so what part of the country are you in, and how are things going for you?
Yeah, I'm in Columbus, and things are as well as can be expected. Most everyone else, working remotely, working from home. I bought a camper a few months ago with
Oh, wow.
visions of hitting the road and working from the camper and
That's good.
you know far flung places, and so I've had it out a couple of times and plan to get it out a couple more times. So I think that's one of the things that maybe is going to be a good benefit of the pandemic is people will maybe get a little bit more mobile and go see some new places and have some new experiences in
Sure.
in in sort of remote settings away from people. So maybe that'll be something that will be good for a lot of people coming out of it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's definitely a good point. And I think I agree with you. I think that this pandemic has opened the eyes of certainly all of us to different capacities, and help challenge our critical thinking about how we live our lives, and what's truly important at the end of the day. And so those experiences are truly important. And so yeah, that sounds really cool with your camper, man. We'll have to take a look at that. It sounds like it'd be fun. My wife and I might have to invest in something like that.
Well, the first time I took it out, I had only owned it for about a week, and half the stuff I didn't even know how to operate once I got to the campground.
Right.
So there was like a white handle on the roof, and I didn't want to turn it because I didn't know what it did,
Yeah.
and it turns out it's for the TV antenna.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
it took me it took me a couple of weeks to figure out all of the sort of operation of it. And
Sure.
I don't know, maybe I'm just not that smart because it probably shouldn't have taken that long.
Well, I'm sure it didn't have this big, manual that told you about everything. I doubt
Oh,
it.
it did.
So,
It did. Just in typical style, I was
right.
like, I can figure out how to work this stuff.
Right.
Until I then realized I couldn't, and then had to resort back to the manual. But
There you
we
go.
won't. But we won't talk about that part.
Yeah, we'll leave that part out.
Right.
Let's dig into your background, Ryan. Tell me who you are, and how did you get to what you're doing now, where you're taking campers around the country, and
Yeah.
how did you get to that point?
Being a very uninformed camper,
Yeah.
professional now.
Right.
Um, it, it, I've been a part of starting 6 companies over time, and very fortunate to get access to some, opportunities with some early stage companies. And, I'm old enough now that the first company that I joined that we would now call a startup at that time was really just a small business. We had some, big dreams and hopes, and we had some success, and that company that ended up getting sold. And then, I had met some people and built up my network a little bit, and then had access to some other opportunities. And then 9 years ago, it's actually strange to talk about it in that length. I became a partner and a principal at AWH, and we're a digital product data consulting firm. So we build custom software products for clients across the spectrum of startups, mid-market companies, and enterprises, and also help those companies solve data challenges. And so I'm a product person at heart.
Sure.
I like building new software products. That's really where my professional joy and sort of accomplishment comes from.
Sure.
And so I've spent most of my professional life in some capacity helping to build software products and then to build businesses that then commercialize those software products.
Sure, absolutely. When you build those products, Ryan, what's typically your approach? Are you building kind of, beta test software like when you go to market with a startup? I'd imagine that, there's there's kind of that, what's mission critical, I guess, so to speak, to, begin getting it out to market. And then I imagine you work with a organization or a business to create a beta test, and then you test it in the market, and you see, okay, whatever bugs, what's the feedback, that sort of thing, and then you kind of round it out, and maybe you stair step in an agile environment, and then you finally have a finished product that goes to market. Is that typically how it works, or does it vary from kind of startup to startup?
It varies a little bit depending on the product and the problem that's being solved and who the customers or users are.
Yeah,
But generally, you encapsulated it pretty well. It is, and one of the mistakes that a lot of founders and startups make is because much of building a product and trying to create a company on top of that product goes against human nature
sure,
because we are wired to build, we are wired to solution, and because that feels like progress and that feels like traction.
sure,
When at the beginning your level of understanding about the problem and then validating potential solutions to solve the problem in a way that users would value is really is the kernel at the
yeah,
beginning. Because if you don't have that problem understanding, excuse me, and that sort of value equation that's validated with customers and users,
sure.
then you're just as likely to build something that users don't value and won't use and won't pay for, as you are going to get it right. So um, early on, it's really important to spend a lot of time with customers and a tremendous amount of times understanding the problem.
Sure, absolutely. Let's take a step back real quick, Ryan. From your perspective, as someone that's built companies and works with a lot of startups, when you look at startup founders, right? What do you look to see in them that suggests to you these guys or these girls are going to be successful? And then what do on the contrast, what do you see in, a man or woman, boy or girl that suggests they probably don't have what it takes. They're probably not as committed to this as um, maybe they should be.
Yeah, I think if anybody, and I can tell you that the way that it typically sort of gets presented and the way that somebody, typically will think about, becoming an entrepreneur and a founder is it starts, oftentimes in a misguided way under the narrative of, well, I want to be my own boss and I want to
Right.
do my own thing,
Yeah.
right? And that's never the place to start, because it's that's not enough. That is such a a loose sort of representation of what it means to be, a founder, to start a company,
Right.
and it's never a good enough reason that you just don't want to work for somebody else. And so the best founders are the ones that care about the problem deeply, and they care about solving the problem more than they care about any personal success, any company success. They legitimately have a purpose to solve the problem and to change the way that people do a job, or to improve people's lives, by solving the problem. And I think that if there was one thing that I would say to people that are thinking about being an entrepreneur or founder is, you better have the mindset that entrepreneur equals problem solver.
Yes. Exactly.
It's not, hey, you're going to be some sort of celebrity, and it's not, you're going to make a lot of money, and you're going to be able to set your own schedule, and you're going to have all this freedom and independence. Some of that is true, some of that might be possible, some of that might come to fruition, but what you really are is a problem solver that is trying to solve a problem with a particular solution and product. And then you're a problem solver inside of the business of operating a company,
Yeah.
because there will be an unending series of problems that you have to deal with as a founder.
Sure.
And so I would just say that people that have that problem solver mentality are more likely to succeed than those that are approaching it from a more sort of egocentric
Sure.
perspective.
Yep, exactly. And one of the things, because we know from whatever it's called, right? The recession of kind of 08, 09, and some of 10, that entrepreneurship became sexy, right? It became a lot of people were impacted in the workforce, and as a result of that, the entertainment business picks it up, where you get shows like Shark Tank and that sort of thing that kind of spry up, right, Ryan? And so now the masses get introduced to entrepreneurship, and social media plays a big role in how that's communicated as well. And a point that you touched on that I've seen in talking with people is that egocentric piece of it, where people see images all the time. They look on social media and they see people that are kind of entrepreneur slash celebrity, and then that's what they more desire to be, and they don't think about it as entrepreneur in terms of, I'm willing to take an inherent risk to solve a problem. And that's essentially how I've always looked at it too, the same way that you defined it. And so, I guess that leads to a question with people, because a lot of people listen to this podcast are, kind of young in their entrepreneur walk. They may have gotten to a proof of concept, Ryan, but
Mm-hmm.
they have maybe a side hustle, right? So they're at work right now, whatever they're doing, they're making widgets for a company, right, and getting paid by the hour or a salary. And then away from that, they have some other side hustle, and they want to, I want to transition that side hustle to replace my job, right?
Right.
And so how would you suggest, if that person came to you and said, "Hey, Ryan, I feel like I've got something good. I've got to let go, or I want to replace this job, right?" How would you coach someone in that kind of aspect?
Yeah, I think side hustles can be dangerous. And I'll give you some context around that. Um, I think that the hustle sort of mantra is one that speaks to busyness and not acting with intentionality and with
Sure,
discipline, right?
sure,
And so, I think hustle should be a given as part of trying to accomplish something. And but the hustle sort of mantra and almost culture has evolved to the point of I think being a little negative and destructive. And so I think side hustles for most people are never going to materialize into anything of consequence and substance.
sure,
um, and the only way that they really do materialize into anything of substance and consequence is if they get um, disciplined enough about it to then be and to know enough about it to then be willing to take the leap to leave the day job, so to speak, the primary gig to
sure,
to do the new company. And they get confidence. Someone can get confidence to make that leap. I'm going to sound a little repetitive, but I want to
sure,
drive this point home because I think it's crucial
absolutely,
that you should never take the leap from a full-time gig to starting a company unless you understand the problem you're going to solve at an
yes,
expert level, and you've already validated that there's customer acceptance and validation of that problem and your potential solution.
sure,
Because if you take that leap without having done that problem identification and that customer validation as part of it, you're going to be leaping into an abyss that then you're going to have to do those things, but now there's so much pressure on it to happen quickly to
yes,
replace the income you were getting from the day job, that pressure doesn't allow you to do the problem and customer validation at a deep enough level, because now you're trying to move so fast to try to have the business generate some revenue and profit to replace the primary gig that you just left, that it
Sure.
just almost never works.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things I loved in that response, Ryan, is you didn't touch on so much of the money or income piece of it in terms of that's what I think, keeps people obviously from doing it. Hey, hey Ryan, I'm making $60,000 a year building widgets for XYZ company. I really want to do this because I think I can now make $150,000 a year doing this, right? And so people are making always that economic decision when trying to decide whether to break away or whatnot, Ryan. And I loved you touched on it from the practicality of again understanding that you're a problem solver. You're taking a risk to solve a problem, and not just solely from the lifestyle piece of it. And
Right.
a lot of times I've had, yeah,
Yeah, most entrepreneurs are going to go broke before they make any money.
yes,
And,
yes,
and,
exactly,
and so no one should ever leave a full-time, well-paying position to be an entrepreneur thinking that immediately they're going to increase their compensation, because again, that's almost never going to happen.
right,
And so when I see people, talking about leaving in your case a 60K position to start a company thinking that they're immediately going to start making more than that, that's just almost never the way that it works and the way that it goes down.
right. No, exactly. And so that's good for MYB community to recognize that very point and apply that as you need be. And so Ryan, let's talk some about with your company with AWH. Um, so you've gone through kind of this period where you've started up companies and you've kind of circled through that true entrepreneur, and then now you get to your current company, and you explained kind of the mission purpose of your current company. How many people work in your company? How do you find your customer? Or how do they find you? Kind of unpack that some for us, kind of that cycle for your business and how you develop your pipeline.
Yeah, so we are a professional services firm, it- like a law firm or an accounting firm or an architectural firm. Our expertise and our service happens to be building software products and solving data challenges.
Sure.
But a professional services firm, by definition, the team is the product,
Yes.
because we don't sell an actual product. We sell service to then some other end of a new product existing or a data challenge being solved.
Sure.
So our team, as with every other professional services firm, it defines who we are. It
Yeah.
defines our capabilities, our expertise, and our ability to do great work. So we have a really terrific team, and we've got about 60-ish people right now, somewhere between 60 and 65, I think.
Yeah.
And we get most of our business by being what I call a visible expert.
Sure.
So I record a podcast for us around building software products. We do lots of blog content. We do a series of other events that used to happen in person that are now virtual. And so we're constantly vigilant about making sure that we are visible and that we are positioning ourselves as thought leaders around building software products and solving data challenges. And
Sure.
I think where many services firms get it wrong is they think that being great at your craft and your area of specialization is enough for you to succeed as a professional services firm.
Mm.
It's not, because unless you're as adept at marketing and sales and business development as you are your fundamental craft, your firm is not going to grow and your firm is not going to succeed. And so we're pretty ruthless about our business development execution,
Sure.
because we know that that equals a future robust pipeline and future client engagements that we would want and covet and would value.
Sure. Absolutely. What Ryan, share an example of a company, even if you may not can use the name, depending on where you're at in the stage with that company, but share an example of a company that you've worked with and kind of the type of product that you've had develop in terms of utilizing your expertise and ability to understand how to synthesize data and direct that towards developing a product or service. Is there an example that you could share?
Oh yeah, yeah, several. We're fortunate in that most of our clients allow us to talk about our work with them, and not every services firm has that opportunity, because in many cases, even with our clients who allow us to talk about our work with them, we have NDAs in place, but that they still give us the freedom to talk about our work with them, and
Sure.
we're appreciative of that. So one example is a company called Include Health, and their website is includehealth.com.
Okay.
And it's a company that we've been engaged with now for several years, and it originally started out as a connected piece of exercise equipment that would allow anyone with any physical limitation to be able to use the machine to work out.
Sure.
And the product and the company have won, I think it's 26 international design awards,
Wow.
including best of show at the International Design awards twice, which is nobody's ever done before. Um, and the company and the product have morphed into being a digital, connected, really muscular skeletal sort of comprehensive exercise and fitness platform. And so there's a cloud piece, there's a mobile app piece, there is a connect visualization piece as part of it now. And so it's become a pretty massive platform and product over the years.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that, to your point earlier, starts out very sort of specific and narrow, which is good, and I encourage people to do that. And then over the last 5 years, it's really mushroomed into being something much larger than that, and much more impactful. And even having been part of it for 5 years, you don't know enough at any point in time to sort of know what something can become.
Sure.
You just keep sort of getting more information that then leads you to believe, oh, well, maybe we could go in this direction, and maybe we could do this, and then you look back and you realize, wow, look how far it's come over 5 years. And that's just the way that it typically goes down. Facebook never thought it would become what it is. Amazon never thought it would become what it is. Right.
Exactly.
I mean,
Right.
so nobody, can see, that far into the future of what's possible and what something can evolve to. You
Sure.
just sort of take it day by day.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. For uh, people listening to this, Ryan, talk through, kind of that early time of at what point does an entrepreneur come to you, right? At what stage do they need to have already made some level of investment into their product or service? Do they come to you simply with the idea? And kind of unpack for us, because some folks may listen to this and think, well, do I already have to be cash flowing or have this money ready to invest, or is it enough of a value that I've got a really good product or service that I really believe in, and I just need the support of a company like yours and maybe a few investors. I don't really have, again, I'm thinking of the $60,000 a year person that's cash flowing enough to keep their household going, but they don't have a lot of extra money to put into their idea, their product or service, but they feel really strongly about it. So at what point does it make sense, I guess, to get involved with you and your company?
It does vary, and I think and we engage with clients across the spectrum that you described. So some clients come to us with a very blurry vision of what they want to accomplish,
Sure.
and part of our work with them is to help to bring that vision into clarity.
Yeah.
Other clients come to us sometimes with a a beta version of the product or a version one of the product already built,
Sure.
and they've done some validation with it, with customers, and now they need to build the first sort of true commercial version of the product. And we have everything in between. Some clients come to us with wireframes and sort of sketches of what they want to build, and so it really runs the gamut. And what we try to do is to meet the client where they are.
Yeah.
And since we're an end-to-end product firm, which means we can take everything from concept and validation all the way through to delivery and deployment, and we've got people across that entire skill set, from designers to architects to data people to developers, that we can take a client and meet them where they are, wherever they are.
Sure.
And from a financial perspective, it's our team is highly experienced and has tremendous expertise. So we're certainly not the least expensive option for a client to get a product built or to solve a data challenge. With that said, we are financially flexible in that a few years ago we started financing some of our clients and some of the product work, because one of the things that we saw happening, and this is really happening across the globe, is pre-seed and seed investment, venture capital, if you will, is really drying up and going away.
Sure.
And there's a huge gap between angel investors and Series A venture
Sure.
capital now. And so we started financing some of our clients and some of the products, one, out of necessity, because the products would not have gotten built if we didn't. The companies would have just died on the vine.
Sure.
And two, because there were some clients that were working on really interesting problems, and the products would be really interesting products that we wanted to work on, that we wanted to be a part of.
Yeah.
And so we had to get creative financially around it to make it happen. And thankfully we've been around long enough, and we have and we're robust enough that we have the financial wherewithal to be able to do things like that. So I would say if somebody's headed down the path of building a software product, and they need some guidance and some support and potentially some minds and hands to help them do that, there's no harm in starting a conversation around it and seeing
Sure.
if there's a mutually good fit.
Yeah, no, definitely makes sense. Definitely makes sense. And so I hope MYB is taking notes with that, because that's a great piece to consider, depending on where you are in your process, right? That there's a resource like Ryan Frederick, who is the principal with AWH. Ryan, so let's get into, obviously today's environment, right? And we spoke some a little bit offline about the pandemic and how business affects that. So, how is it affected? You talked some about, some of the investing, somewhat drying up. How has the current environment in this unprecedented time, affected your business, if it has? And kind of the environment around your business and around the startup community.
Yeah, we've been fortunate that it hasn't impacted us too heavily, and that's really a derivative, I think, of we're a team of knowledge workers.
Sure.
Your Mac and they've got an internet connection. It doesn't really matter whether they're in our office, in their basement, or in a camper at some campground somewhere, right? And so it has not affected our operation. And in fact, if it has, it's probably affected our operation to the positive, not to the negative, because people there's because most of our team would show up in the office every day pre-pandemic. We had some remote team members pre-pandemic, but most of the team would show up at the office every day. And every office environment has its own set of distractions, right? And so for some team members, working remotely and working from home has actually made them more productive and more efficient because they don't have the office distractions. Now, I also get, as we were talking, before we started recording, that, if you've got small children, going to the office might have been a way for you to have less distractions while you were trying to work, and having small kids around at home while you're trying to work, may have added distraction, to the process. So for some people, it's probably been beneficial, and for other people, it's probably really been a challenge and a struggle. I think the pandemic has affected our clients more, and certainly has affected the startup community and startups, much more than it's impacted us as an individual firm. On the investment side, the investment piece has gotten a little messier and a little crazier because of the pandemic, and venture capitalist investors, trying to figure out what is this going to mean for the economy, where's it going to go, and all of those sort of macro, drivers. And then it's harder for startups right now to get much face time with customers. And so as they're trying to do that early problem, understanding and product validation, it's really hard to get in front of customers. And so that's a real problem for startups right now. It's not as effective and productive to do that problem understanding and that product validation with customers virtually. People are learning how to do it better, and it'll get better over time. But right now, it's not a one-for-one. And so I think that's the biggest thing that's hurting startups right now, is their ability to get in front of and spend really quality, intimate time with customers.
It's actually interesting, Ryan, when you say that, because um, I built a brand during this pandemic that came out of the pressure of demand. With doing this podcast and working with the banking communities, particularly the community banking community, um, when they closed down branch lobbies, right? So March, this pandemic hits, and then banks respond by closing branch lobbies, right, to protect their customers and protect their employees in the branch. One of the challenges that came to me from folks that I work closely with was, well, Ron, how do we connect with our existing customer base? Much less prospects, but how do we get communication out to them if they're not coming in branches? There's only so many emails I can send out. Everyone's not going to be on social media, and certainly not the time that we post it, right? And so, how do we do that? And so, uh, they asked about podcasting as a way to not so much connect in an intimate way like you're describing that startups are looking to do to kind of vet and things like that. They just want to be able to communicate their story and information, right? And so I didn't have a platform for doing that. They're like, "Hey, can you help us set up this podcast and that sort of thing?" And yeah, I do mine, but when a bank calls me in Michigan and I'm in Tennessee, right? It's like I don't, I mean, I can tell you how to do it, but I can't help you do it.
It's almost like they speak a different language in Michigan too, right? Especially
Right.
from being in Memphis.
Yeah.
Uh, I had to get. I'm in Columbus, and if anybody who's in Columbus, whether you and I'm not from Columbus, but if you're in Columbus, you become a fan of the Buckeyes and
Of
Ohio
course.
State,
Right.
just by sort of lack of will, ultimately, I guess.
Right.
So, if I can get a shot in at Michiganders, then, I need to take the
Of
opportunity
course.
to do that.
There you go. Definitely. And I work with the Ohio Bankers League there in Columbus. So some great folks over there. And so, uh,
And clearly those people are much easier to work with and much more reasonable than the people from Michigan, right?
yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
I'm just kidding. I'm sure
Yeah, I
that
know it.
everybody that Ron works with from Michigan is
Yeah, tremendous
a
people.
tremendous people and banking professionals that, are held in the highest regard.
Right, exactly. Yep, and they are. Yeah, in both states they are. So,
Awesome.
but um, but yeah, so I get a call from a bank, like you say, they're in Michigan that is interested in podcasting, and they're willing to compensate me for it. And so I quickly developed a brand and did some research. I mean, they were like, "Hey, can you get with us? We need your help with this." And so I ended up creating the brand pod, which is the entity that I help right now community banks get into podcasting and develop it from idea generation through implementation, helping them with equipment needs. And then I actually hosted one yesterday called the CRA Files, for a banking organization that works in the CRA realm. And so again, that was tremendous. I enjoyed doing it, and that episode will be out very soon. But to your point again, Ryan, during this time, it's actually been a benefit to me because in this lane, like you spoke of already kind of somewhat working remote, and having a customer base that then allows for an opportunity to then create a new brand. And then what happened was I started getting other calls about setting up a podcast. Like you talked about, these bankers all speak to each other and they connect and communicate. And so once one's doing one, here comes the other, right? So I started getting phone calls about setting up a podcast. And for them, they see it as an inexpensive yet effective way to produce content, right? And to be able to tell their story. And so they're excited about it because, again, as lobbies are closed, people are at home, they've got their phone, they got their tablet, and, they can get out relevant content, to their customer base. And the big thing they're looking to is they can share their story, like behind the curtain, right? When we close the lobby down, what are we doing? Right? What are we doing with our people? And these community banks, these are folks that live right in their community, right? And so they're able to share, here's what we're doing for employees. Here's how we're helping, employees. Here's how we're helping customers. Here's what we're looking. Can you send us feedback on this and that? And so they're very excited about that. And it's created kind of a lane for me that I didn't have, pre, say, March the 10th, right? And I didn't really see myself going into. But it's added a
Right.
value proposition for me to add to my relationship with these banks. And so that's just
Well,
been tremendous.
yeah, I think circumstances like with the pandemic causes organizations and people to sort of reassess,
Sure.
right, the way that they've been doing things. And if you're unable to operate the way that you traditionally have operated, then you're sort of forced to think of new ways of doing things. And that's going to create some opportunities, for people and organizations. As much as we dislike change, sometimes when change is forced upon us, it's a good thing. And so,
Sure.
yeah, glad to hear that you're benefiting from it in some way, and that the community banks are looking at new ways to get their story out and get content out and engage with their customers.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Quick fun question for you, Ryan. I like to ask guests this and love to hear your
Uh
feedback on it.
oh, here comes the trip up question,
Yeah,
right?
the ball, right.
Right.
Here's the Barbara Walters, hey, tell me about your childhood, and then you start crying, and
Right, exactly. Tell me what scares you the most. Oh,
right.
okay.
Yeah. So let's do this. If I had $100 million, right, and I want to give that to you, no strings attached. I just pull up a brink truck to your house and say, Ryan, this is for you, $100 million. Again, no strings attached. What would you do with that money and why?
Hmm. And this probably would be a different answer 30 years ago than now.
Sure. Yeah.
Because when you're younger, I think you value money over other things like time. And
Sure.
so, what I value now, being in my mid 50s, is time and experiences.
Sure.
And so I probably would take the money and distribute it across some nonprofits and some organizations that are, doing meaningful work to help people get skills and to get awareness and access.
Sure.
Because I think the three democratizing aspects of sort of personal commercialization and income trajectory are skill. Do you have skills that are monetizable?
Sure.
And then do you have awareness of how you can monetize those skills and sort of what the ecosystem is around those skills? And then do you have access?
Yeah.
Can you get to the right people, and do you know who the right people are, et cetera? And I think those three sort of legs of the economic prosperity stool
Sure.
is sort of the difference between someone who's, born, who wins the gene lottery and is born, dealt a good hand, and somebody who's born and not dealt a good hand.
Sure.
And so I would fund organizations that are helping to put those three pillars in place for people that are maybe not dealt as good a hand at birth as some others.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Ryan, how important is family? Somewhat along those lines, how important is family for you? I've always found that with just successful people, period, that some level of family, right, to whatever extent that they have, that is near and dear to their heart. Talk to us about how important family is to what you do.
Yeah, it's important. I'm divorced. Being married ultimately didn't work out, although for a long time it was good and it was fine.
Sure.
But I've got a 27-year-old son and a 12-year-old, and
Yeah.
the 27-year-old is on his own now, and he's, independent, and the 12-year-old I have part-time.
Sure.
And, the time that I get to spend with him is very important, and I treasure it. My parents have both passed away. And I grew up in upstate New York, and where most of my sort of family is, and I'm in Columbus, and I don't have a lot of family in close proximity.
Sure.
But one of the things that I have found is, and when you're an entrepreneur, and when you spend time in the entrepreneurial space, the lines between personal and professional get blurred really easily and quickly.
Absolutely.
Because it's everybody who's an entrepreneur or who even joins a startup, and they don't have to be one of the founders, but if you're early into a startup, you personally are putting a lot of yourself into this product and into this company. And so I have a pretty robust sphere of people around me who are not just business acquaintances and not just colleagues, but people that I've gotten to know on a personal level, and who are friends, and who I care about way beyond the business aspects of it, and I think that the same is true in return. And so I think that's one of the things that I've always really loved about startups and entrepreneurial endeavors is it's not just about the commercial success. It's about supporting each other and helping each other grow professionally, and being there for each other, and it becomes very much like a sports team sort of an environment where you've got each other's backs, and you're sort of in it to win it, and the locker room and the startup environment becomes a very galvanizing sort of space. It like when you hear an athlete retire, they almost never say that they're gonna miss the money, or that they're gonna miss the ballparks or the travel or the being in. They almost always start out by saying, I'm gonna miss the guys, right?
Yeah.
or the girls. I'm going to miss the locker room. I'm going to miss the camaraderie.
Yeah.
And that's what being a part of a startup is, right? It is
Yeah.
a very small group of people trying to overcome insurmountable, irrational odds to try to make something work.
Yeah, definitely. No, great way to put that and great points. Definitely, Ryan. As we wrap up, because this has been tremendous. I mean, tremendous content, tremendous value that you shared here with the Minding Your Business community, and a lot for us to go back and think about, quite frankly, and challenge our own critical thinking about a lot of the things that we're doing. As none of us have a crystal ball as to what's to come, but I think having the right perspective, you've helped. I think challenge us all to look into that. What are one or two best practices, Ryan, that have worked for you, kind of through your walk, thus far, that you think will work for other people?
Yeah, I would say if if someone, and this is true whether they want to become a founder and whether they become an entrepreneur and start a company or not, and if they just continue to to work in a career and not have their own thing,
Yeah.
this holds up in personal life too. um, get and be intentional and disciplined.
Yes.
Know what you value, know what you want, and then be relentless in the discipline to achieve that,
Yeah.
and to accomplish it. And it's not just about the accomplishing of something. If you are intentional and disciplined and you develop that muscle and that sort of personal agency, you will be so resilient and so confident that you can take on problems and new challenges, and you won't, and you will be able to deal with them with a level of assurance that things are going to be okay,
Yeah.
versus a tremendous amount of stress and anxiety that you're unsure of how you're going to navigate it and whether you're going to be able to deal with it or not. So um, that's one thing I would say. The other thing I would say is self-awareness.
Sure.
People, most of us don't spend enough time really understanding the way that we tick, why we think what we think, why we make the decisions that we make, why something gets us upset or emotional. And if you're going to take the entrepreneurial journey, you better be self-aware, because you better understand why you make decisions. You better understand what gets you emotional, because it's okay to be emotional in business, but emotion better not drive your decisions in business.
Right.
And if you're not self-aware of how you handle things and process things and react, you're probably going to react and handle things in a manner that you'd rather not.
Right. No, that's a great point too. Managing and having the, some people refer to as the emotional intelligence, but just like you say, the balancing of emotion, like you say, that you'll have personally and professionally, but where it doesn't adversely impact decision making. I think that's extremely critical. That's extremely critical. Ryan Frederick, principal of AWH, is our guest today here on the Minding Your Business podcast. Of course, you can go to awh.net to learn more about the company. Send a contact. Let them know that you heard Ryan right here on the Minding Your Business podcast. Ryan, again, I have to thank you tremendously for taking time out here on a Friday to join on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the
I know
nuggets.
I could have been in my camper right now.
Yeah,
I mean, this
exactly.
is
Right.
this is a huge sacrifice on my part.
Yeah, I mean,
No, I'm joking.
yeah,
That I've got to figure out how to work it first, as we talked about. So
yeah,
yeah, I appreciate you having me. It was great talking to you. Good getting to know you for a few minutes before we started the recording.
yeah.
Glad things are going well for you and your family's well. So I appreciate the opportunity to be on with you and have a conversation.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, MYB, the information for AWH is in the show notes. So you can click on that link, awh.net. go. It's a great website. Go check. You can learn more about Ryan and his team. And if you have an idea, you have a product or service, I'd recommend reach out to Ryan and his team. There via the website. There's various communication channels for you to do that. Reach out, and a conversation can be had, and you just never know where that can lead. And if you're serious about what that next step is, or maybe you have been out there with your product and service and you're just running into some challenges, and there's a need for you to be able to better leverage data and synthesize data properly, then reach out to Ryan and his team there at AWH. Definitely recommended. And so, Ryan, definitely would love to continue to have you as a friend of the show, and would love to have you back as we progress down the lines here with everything that's going on. And if anything, we'd love to have you back to see if you learn to work the camper or not.
Yeah, that might be the more interesting story and content is, camper diaries,
Right.
a whole new series.
Yeah, there you
Um,
go.
right. Would be happy to come back and talk about, some other, projects and clients and some of the things that I see happening in the startup space, and to catch up on how things are going with you and some of your listeners. So it'd be fun.
Yep, absolutely. And with my banking travels, I actually have scheduled. I actually would have been already up there, but I have scheduled to get to Columbus here at some point and meet with the Ohio Bankers League. So I'd love to look you up and maybe get a chance to see the camper and grab a bite to eat and laugh about quarantine times.
Sounds terrific. If you make your way up here, hit me up and let me know. Be
Yep.
happy to buy you a beer.
Yep, there you go. That sounds great. Ryan Frederick, thank you so much, sir. And best wishes for you and your family here going forward. And we'll talk soon.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me.
Right. Thanks. Listen, NYB, continue to support the podcast. Go to the nybpodcast.com and you can see all content. Special thanks to our guest today, Ryan Frederick with AWH. He's principal of AWH. That's awh.net. Listen, I spoke a little bit earlier about BrandPod. That's brandyourpod.com. Now is the time. I'm working with community banks, but I can also help you. If you're interested in launching your podcast platform, I'm your podcast partner. I can help you through idea generation, depending on what type of podcast you want to set up, who your target audience is, and how to connect with them, the type of equipment that you need. I'll tell you this. Here's a spoiler alert. I'm in my bonus room here in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm on a laptop. I'm on a microphone that's on a fancy $25 stand, and I'm recording via Zoom that I pay $15 a month for. And then I edit using Audacity, which is free on my PC. All right. There's many different ways to do this, folks, but you can do it. So if you've had that podcast idea, now's the time. Now's a great time to connect. I'm telling you, I'm connecting with people all over that are interested in content and interested in what you have to say and present. So now's the time. So go to brandyourpod.com, schedule a no cost consultation. We'll talk about your idea and you own your content. And so now's the time, brandyourpod.com. Also, the Minding Your Business online directory is up. Thank you for all of you that are supporting that and sharing that. Those are businesses that I have looked into, and they're endorsed by me. So they have the Champion stamp of approval, and they're on the directory. That directory goes out to my network on a monthly basis, as well as state banking associations that are 11. I spoke about them some on the episode here with Ryan, but there are 11 state banking associations that share that link with their networks. I'll tell you, in each state, about 95% of the banks are members of the banking association. Not just the banks, but all their people, all their vendors. These are folks that would love to know more about your business and will support your business if they're aware of it. So when you go to the nybpodcast.com, up at the top, there is the online directory. You can click there and you can become a part of the directory. So definitely check that out. You can email me, Ron at the nybpodcast.com, if you have questions or thoughts or whatnot. But would love to have you and your business as part of that directory. It's queryable, so you can query it based on whatever criteria you want. and search it, and you'll find some great businesses across a myriad of industry. And so you'll find someone there that you'd love to connect with and do business with. And again, that link's going to go out on the monthly basis. So look forward to seeing you there. Listen, I'm going to run. Everyone have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week. And remember, there are three things that unite us all, no matter how we look in the mirror. We all want to be a little better for ourselves, a little better for our families, and a little better for our communities. This is Champ Ron, the Minding Your Business podcast.